What is up, everybody? Welcome to Life Unlimited Coaching with Coach Kayla. I just want to do a quick intro on this next video or next episode. We just did a hormonal reset masterclass, and so I thought everyone could benefit from the information that was provided, and so it's a little bit different than usual. It's more educational, super tactical, and so hopefully you enjoy it. Thanks for tuning in. What is up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to this hormone reset masterclass. I'm recording this and I'm on Zoom, so if you're on here, comment below so that I know you're watching it. Let me know you're here. Say hello, all that stuff. So just kind of a quick background on why I wanted to do this, and just like an overview of what we're about to talk about today. Okay. So, I've been wanting to talk about this for a little bit, and I want to say it was in September or October. We talked about, I touched on it a little bit in my last, masterclass, right? And I was talking about metabolism in general and kind of like things that affect the metabolism, things that we have been taught over the years that really have a negative impact on metabolism. And one of the main things that a lot of people ask me all the time is like, well, how do hormones affect it? And so I kind of wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what hormones they're usually talking about, right? The three main ones that have a direct impact on like fat loss results and body composition results and all that stuff. And then what has a negative impact on those hormones that are in our day-to-day lives, right? And then things that we can do to actually improve our hormone levels if they are off, right? That don't have anything to do with hormone or with medication or like endless amounts of doctor visits and stuff like that, okay? And so this is going to be a 2-day adventure, all right? And the reason I could do it all in one day, I'm going to be honest. The reason I decided to do it in 2 days is because I didn't want to take up too much time per session. I just wanted to do like quick 20, 30-minute video at the most, right? And then the next day do 20 to 30 minutes, okay? So that's the logic behind why I'm doing it in 2 days. So hopefully you guys will get as much value out of this as you possibly can. Okay, so I want to share my screen here and let's do this, shall we? Okay, so welcome to the Hormone Reset Masterclass. Super pumped to have you. So this is kind of what to expect. Okay, so today we're going to be doing most of the talking. We're going to talk about what hormones are specifically, which ones we're going to be talking about, what they do in the body, and then why they are so negatively impacted these days. Okay, what are we doing to negatively impact these hormones? And then tomorrow, I'm going to talk about the simple ways that we can balance them out and fix them. Okay, so there's 3 main hormones that we're going to be discussing in this masterclass. The first one is testosterone, and then estrogen, and then cortisol. Okay, our body needs and produces all of them, no matter if you're male or female. The ratios and amounts of each matter, and they must be in the right balance for our bodies to feel it at its best and perform optimally in all the ways. Okay, so if we just talk about testosterone to start, so this is the male sex hormone. Okay, but it is also produced in the ovaries by females. It usually comes like it's progesterone, right? And what's crazy in males, over the last 80 years, our average testosterone levels in males has gone down significantly. Okay, so like in 1943, the average testosterone level for males was 1,400. Today, they sampled a bunch of men, and it's actually less than 400. Okay, and there's a lot that has to do with that. And it's not just aging. Like this is kids that are 25, 28, 30. Testosterone levels automatically start to go down at age 30. But they're seeing it start to decrease even sooner, okay? And most of that has to do with the fact that as a society, we're more sedentary in general. Our food quality has gone down. We're eating more processed foods. We don't get outside enough. We don't get outside enough. Our sleep schedules are erratic. We are dealing with a lot of, well, this has more to do with cortisol, but we're dealing with a lot of like artificial light, but there's more chemicals and toxins than our bodies can regulate. Like we haven't evolved enough to regulate all of the chemicals and toxins that are constantly being thrown at our bodies, right? Not just in our food, but like in our environment, our air pollution, our lotions, perfumes, like all that stuff. Now, for the most part, and well, I'll talk about this in a second, but so like there's just a lot of stuff that our body has to regulate that it didn't really have to worry about, 80 years ago. And so because of all of this, we are also overweight and obese, like a high percentage of us. This is like our new natural state, right? And a high percentage of body fat actually turns testosterone if you have belly fat. There's a process called aromatization where your body actually turns testosterone into estrogen. So if you're a male, you have a lot of belly fat, your body's actually not using the testosterone that it should in the right way. Okay. And then finally, we're going to talk about this a lot, but as a society, we are chronically stressed. And cortisol, which is the stress hormone, and we're going to talk about that today as well, it actually shuts off the production of testosterone. Okay. And if you think about it just logically, right? If you are a male and testosterone is the male sex hormone, okay? If you now way back when humans were formed, right? And we were caveman and we were just trying to survive, or even like just think like 150 years ago when we were pioneers, right? Like we were not stressed as much as we are today. We were not in a spot of chronic stress. The stress came when we were trying to survive, when we were put into fight or flight. Okay, so parasympathetic versus sympathetic. That's it, right? And so if you are constantly in the fight or flight state, okay, which we are these days, okay, we have deadlines, we have kids that we're worried about, we have all these things that we are stressed about that are not normal for a human being to experience all of the time, and yet we put these stresses on ourselves all of the time. The sex hormones are going to shut down because our bodies are like, oh, we're just trying to survive, so we're not going to have a sex drive, okay? Because testosterone and estrogen are not going to be produced because cortisol is going to shut them off. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's testosterone. Now let's just jump over to estrogen, okay? So there's 3 types of estrogen. There's estrone, estradiol, and estriol. I totally butchered those, but you get what I'm saying. If you get your estrogen tested at like if you were to go and get your blood drawn, they usually are just testing for E2. I'm just going to say it that way because it's easier. And our bodies, as males and females, we need to have the correct testosterone estrogen ratio. Okay. So an imbalance would be, you could either call it estrogen dominance or androgen dominance, and it'll show up in multiple different ways. Okay. Estrogen dominance, if you're a female and you have more estrogen, and I am guilty of this in certain stages of my life. After I had Wrigley, I had way worse monthly experiences than usual, right? Super heavy, super crampy, all this stuff. My estrogen and testosterone balance was out of whack. I didn't know this, but I found out that if I took a testosterone supplement, okay, so a free testosterone supplement, the cramps were completely diminished and I wasn't as heavy when I was bleeding, right? And so, might be TMI, but it's the reality. Okay. It's an amazing thing that our body does, ladies. But what I'm saying is it put it back into balance because I finally had the right estrogen testosterone balance. Does that make sense? So I was experiencing an estrogen dominant state at that point for whatever reason. I was probably overstressed. I wasn't sleeping, all of the stuff. Okay. So you need to make sure that the balance is there. All right. Sometimes you can have androgen dominance, which would be PCOS. If males are androgen dominant, they'll have acne, oily skin, they'll start to lose their hair, all that stuff. Okay. So to be completely healthy, you need to have the right balance. And as women age, we automatically have a decrease in estrogen. Okay. It's natural. It's part of why our bodies age, right? But these things all happen because of a decrease in estrogen. Okay. So our bone density, like we're more prone to osteoporosis, bone loss. That's what I mean. Bone density loss, I guess. Depression, memory problems, mom brain, anyone, right? Brain processing, same thing. And then our sex drive goes down naturally. Men too. That's why our testosterone goes down and as we age, right? And then the third hormone I want to talk about is cortisol. Okay. And cortisol gets kind of a bad rap. If we have too much cortisol, then we're too stressed out, all this stuff. And people talk about if you have an increase in cortisol and belly fat, right? But that's true. But also if you don't have enough cortisol, it'll also cause belly fat. So cortisol is necessary. Okay. And our pituitary gland determines how much cortisol is released based on what is stressing us out. Okay. But cortisol is vital. It's very important to our bodies. Okay. It helps regulate salt and water balance to control our blood pressure. It helps aid with memory invention. Like when you go and you are about to take a test, if you're worried about it and you're stressed, you're actually more likely to remember and do well on the test because it's going to aid in you recalling from that long-term memory, right? It also helps regulate your metabolism. It controls blood sugar levels and it reduces inflammation. Okay. And the way that cortisol controls blood sugar levels is and when I say that is it will raise blood sugar levels when you need them to be raised. Okay. Through gluconeogenesis. Okay. And so cortisol will go and they will break down muscle tissue in the body so that you will have glucose in your blood if you don't have it right now. Okay. So if you think about this, like back in the day, right? When we're trying to survive and we're stressed out because we're starving, your body cortisol is shot up into you have an increase in cortisol. It's going to go break down your muscle tissue so that you can continue to move forward. Okay. And then it also reduces inflammation. Okay. So, did I miss something? There we go. So just some other facts about cortisol. It's going to be highest in the morning when you wake up. Okay. It should be that way. It should, right? It's what gets us going, gets us moving, and then it slowly decreases throughout the day. And on the inverse, melatonin is lowest in the morning and then increases at night. Now, because of how we run as a society and how we have adapted to use technology and all of this stuff, right? We have a lot of artificial light in our lives, okay? And so sometimes we have these inverted curves where melatonin is highest in the morning and then lowest at night, and cortisol is the exact opposite of what it should be, right? And the reason that is because oftentimes we wake up in the dark, right? We don't get outside all day. We're only dealing with artificial light. And then we watch TV or look at our phones for hours and hours before we go to bed. And our bodies don't know, I don't know if you've heard of a circadian rhythm, but our bodies don't know when it's bedtime and when it's not. But naturally, it should, right? I don't know if you've ever gone camping. And one of my favorite, most restful periods of my life was this 2-day camping adventure. We went to Havasupai and we didn't have our phones or anything. And we woke up with the sun and we went to bed with the sun. And I think we were there for 2 or 3 days. And I just remember sleeping so well. But it was because my body was very regulated in this area, right? So some signs of high or low cortisol. Insomnia would mean that you have high cortisol. Okay, you're constantly stressed, so you can't get to sleep or you can't stay asleep, meaning your cortisol is too high to keep you asleep. It needs to be low in the night, right? We just talked about that. Excess belly fat, like I said, it can be high or low, either one. Okay. If you have anxiety, it's high cortisol. You're stressed out. If you're super, super tired, depressed even, you have low cortisol, right? And then an imbalance or improper amount. That's what I would say, because cortisol, it's not a balance of cortisol. It's just, it operates by itself, right? So you just need the right amount of cortisol. And if you don't have the right amount of cortisol, then can cause what's called secondary hypothyroidism, basically meaning that it'll cause thyroid problems. Okay. So you've heard people their T2, T3, all their thyroid hormones and stuff are imbalanced, right? the good and the bad news about this is that means that some thyroid problems that a lot of people are experiencing these days, they're 100% stress related. Okay. But that also means that they can be 100% preventable, which is encouraging, right? So these are some things that have a negative impact on your hormonal health, right? So a big one is not having enough fat in the diet. All right. Now, enough fat looks different for everybody, but a lot of us have grown up in the 80s and 90s where we were encouraged to cut saturated fats out of our diet completely, right? Like eliminate butter and stop eating red meat because it's too fatty, like all this stuff, right? And it's actually causing a lot of problems because your hormones, they need fat to be produced, okay? So your sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, especially, all right? Another thing is we have high inflammatory foods. A lot of people are eating processed, like just processed foods in general. And I don't like the word processed because like every food is processed, right? So it's not a good word. Junk food is what I would say. And high inflammatory foods, meaning foods that cause inflammation, right? And if you don't know what those are, soy is a big one. Sugar can, to like high fructose corn syrup, usually not necessarily like table sugar, but like high fructose corn syrup. Corn is inflammatory. Gluten is one that's common, right? And I would say that because of the way that we process wheat, that's why it causes inflammation. Because like if you go and you get sourdough bread that's like 4 ingredients, it's probably not going to cause inflammation. But high inflammatory foods, okay? If you don't know what foods cause inflammation for you specifically, because I would argue that everybody's inflammatory response is different based off of how they were raised and what their current diet looks like now, okay? And so if you don't know what inflammatory foods affect you or what foods are inflammatory for you, right? Like dairy is one that is common, but arguably we've kind of backed ourselves into that one, right? You need to find out what it is. And so one way to do it would be to get onto a super healthy, non-inflammatory diet food list and eat off of that for a couple of weeks and then slowly add things back in. That's the way that I've always recommended for my clients, but there's lots of different ways to do it. Okay. Anyway, high inflammatory foods, not regulating your blood sugar, meaning that you are, stress, obviously, because that is blood sugar regulation, but also like you want to have balanced meals, right? Oftentimes when people are like, oh, I'm addicted to sugar, you're not really addicted to sugar, right? You're addicted to like satiating foods. But if you're not regulating your blood sugar, it means that you're not eating the right ratios of carbs, fats, and proteins in the right amounts at the right times. Does that make sense? So like if you eat an apple by itself, apples have a lot of fiber, but like if you eat, what's a good example? Candy by itself, it's going to spike your blood sugar, right? But if you were to eat a Snickers bar instead of just like hard candy, right? That's just straight sugar. If you were to eat a Snickers bar, it has proteins, fats, and carbs. So it probably won't spike your blood sugar as much because it has a little bit more to it. Does that make sense? So that's just some examples. So when you're planning your meals out, make sure that it has a good balance of carbs, proteins, and fats so that it can regulate your blood sugar better. Okay. And there's lots of different ways that you can do this, depending on what your body is doing, but we won't get into that today. And then if you are not exercising and increasing your muscle mass, right? Like if you are allowing your muscles to deteriorate and you're increasing your body fat. So if you're living a sedentary lifestyle, it's going to have a negative impact on your hormonal health. Okay. If you're chronically stressed, this is probably the most important one. And I know it sounds like this vague blanket statement, which bothers me, because there's so many different ways that we stress out our bodies these days. Like that the basic, we don't sleep enough. We don't eat right. We over exercise, a lot of us, to try and compensate for the fact that we don't eat right. We overwork ourselves. We're constantly stressed about money. Like there's a lot of emotional, mental, and physical things that stress our bodies out, right? And it's not whether we're stressed or not stressed. It's how stressed are we, like on a scale of 0 to 100, right? So there's a big spectrum of stressed. And it's good to be a little bit stressed, but it's not good to be overly stressed, right? And you have to find the balance that is not detrimental to you and your body and your overall health, because exercise stresses the body out, but it's a good stress as long as you don't overdo it, right? Does that make sense? Like, what's another example? Pushing yourself and like working hard is good, but you don't want to overwork yourself. So it's like, it's finding where on the spectrum you need to hang out that doesn't cause you to be chronically stressed. And then I just said like over exercise. So a lot of people, they'll want to lose weight. So they'll sign up for a marathon and then they'll go from not running to like running 4 days a week. And especially for males, long distance aerobic exercise can have like super detrimental effect on your testosterone levels. Okay. And then finally, alcohol consumption, you could either diminish it or eliminate it altogether. Both would have a ton of help in the hormonal health area. Okay. So that's basically what I wanted to talk about today. I didn't want to take up too much time, but I hope you kind of get the what we're going to talk about tomorrow, right? There's several different ways that we can balance your hormones. And so the only way to know if your hormones are out of balance for real is to go get them checked. But if you do feel like you are dealing with any of these things, right? Like maybe you're not sleeping. Maybe you do have more excess belly fat than usual, right? In an imbalanced amount compared to the rest of your body. Maybe you don't have a sex drive at all, right? Maybe you are having a hard time getting pregnant, or you as the male, like your sperm count is down. Like there's lots of different signs, obviously, that would tell you that your hormones are out of balance, right? Maybe you have acne, maybe you have PCOS, maybe you have really bad periods, right? Like there's lots of different ways that they're red flags, right? And so if you are in that boat, then tomorrow's going to be super beneficial because they're not crazy things. They're simple things. It's just, they're simple, but not easy to do, right? They're easier not to do in a lot of ways. And so hopefully it'll give you some clarity around what you can do so that those things that you're dealing with can be eliminated from your body, from your life, and improve your quality of life, right? So anyway, hopefully this was valuable and it wasn't too long. Tomorrow will be shorter, and I have a big announcement tomorrow, so I'm excited, and hopefully you guys have a wonderful day.